Hi everybody, I'm Paul from Radically Rational, and I'd like to humbly ask you for just a few minutes of your time right now. Let me start, as I sometimes do, with quoting a pop song. Remember the Junior Walker and the All-Star song, "What Does It Take to Win Your Love for Me?" A great song, right? Great sax riff too, but I digress. In all honesty and earnestness, what does it take to convince you that Donald Trump is unfit to be president? I'm going to take a few minutes of your time. I'm going to ask for your consideration. I am not looking for conflict. I am not looking to pull the pin on hand grenades. But everything I'm about to tell you is an established fact. And you're going to have to decide whether all of these established facts are acceptable to you. Donald Trump is a convicted felon. That in and of itself should be disqualifying. Donald Trump has been found liable for sexual assault. That in and of itself should be disqualifying. Donald Trump has multiple additional indictments and felony charges that he's facing. That in and of itself should be disqualifying. Donald Trump unquestionably incited and organized and fanned the flames of Jan 6, 2021. This is no exaggeration. I'll stand by this statement. That was the darkest day in American history. You say, well, what about 9/11? No, those were bad guys attacking us. Well, what about Pearl Harbor? Same deal. Jan 6 was us trying to destroy us. And it was all Donald Trump's idea. That in and of itself should be disqualifying. Donald Trump attempted to overthrow the government of the United States by first clearly lying about the results of a free and fair election, and then putting together this labyrinthine scheme to keep himself in power, which would have prevented the peaceful transfer of power, even though we didn't have a completely peaceful transfer of power. Would have been the first time that's happened in American history. That should be disqualifying in and of itself. And what about his first term? Tell me one thing he did right. Tell me one thing he did right. At the top of my list of reasons why Donald Trump should not be president again is that he is patently incommon. He is a screw-up machine. Tell me one thing he succeeded at. Certainly don't tell me the pandemic, because after initially just denying there was such a thing, his lack of action clearly, and there's statistical models on this, of the 1 million Americans that died of COVID during the pandemic, 400,000 of them did not have to die and died unnecessarily. That's incompetent. That in and of itself should be disqualifying. Immigration, we got a problem at the border. We sure do. And guess what? Some cool heads in both parties, for once, got together in a bipartisan way and came up with a bill. Wouldn't have made it perfect, but it would have fixed a lot of this stuff. And it would have gone a long way to reinforce the idea that we're all Americans and we can work together. And Trump put the quietus on it because he would rather use it as a political tool than actually find a solution. That in and of itself should be disqualifying. He's called our dead military heroes suckers and losers. Stop. Fact. Enough people have confirmed that. That's a fact. He called a murdered American soldier an effing Mexican. Stop! It's been established. That happened. He references that we're an occupied country. Where have you heard that before? He says that immigrants And he doesn't just include immigrants. He and his MAGAs don't include just immigrants, which would be horrible enough, but it's also American citizens of color. And he says they're poisoning the blood of America. You don't have to have a PhD in history to know that that's almost a direct quote from the Sieg Heil dude. It is. Poisoning the blood of America. Calling people trash. Isn't maybe the biggest job of being president of the United States is at least making an attempt to unite people? You're not always going to be successful, but wouldn't it be the idea? Name me one time in the last 9 years as either a candidate or as president that Donald Trump has said or done one single thing to even try to bring us together. That's not presidential. He's been called a fascist. Kamala Harris stood by that. And here's the thing, just like this is a t-shirt and that over there is a chair, a fascist is a fascist. Now he denies the word, but he embraces principles and people and historical events that are the very definition of fascism. 600,000 Americans lost their lives in World War II beating down a guy like that. We didn't vote for him. We got rid of them and made sure that they were not going to be in control. Trump is in the pocket of Putin. Fact. He is in cahoots with Netanyahu. Fact. And that goes for you too, Elon. This is a national security issue. This man is not capable of and should not be trusted with securing our national security. He's also clearly mentally ill. And there are hundreds and thousands of psychologists who have published that. Now, you talk about cognitive decline. Some of you all up in arms about Joe Biden, and you weren't always wrong. But compared to Donald Trump, Joe Biden looked like an absolute citadel of stability, and you want to project that 4 more years down the road, this time with no constraints? Last time, at least we had some guardrails, and we had some courageous men and women that kept the whole thing from coming down. Wouldn't be there this time. And then there's the economy. Let's get straight about this. For the most part, when people say they trust Trump more on the economy, what they're really doing is sounding a dog whistle that he agrees with them about white supremacy and fear of white replacement. This whole thing ultimately is based on racism. So you're going to deport all these people, okay? And you think that's a good economic move? You think you're paying too much for stuff now? Woo-hoo! And here's the thing. The question is, are you better now than you were 4 years ago? Look, it's not going to be true of everybody. It never is. But sometimes the exceptions just reinforce the rule. No, not everybody's better off, and we want them to be. We want our fellow Americans to be better off. But the truth is, for the overwhelming majority of Americans, hell yes, you're better off than you were 4 years ago. Inflation, now under 3%. By the way, it averaged 8% during Trump's 4 years in office. Our annual growth, quarter to quarter, year over year, very robust. Some really nice work by the Fed kept us out of a recession. Our economy right now is the envy of every other country in the world. It's the biggest economy in the world, and that was not the case under Donald Trump. Now, I would maintain that there's some really large institutional issues in what I consider to be the most important presidential election in our country's history. But if you're just one of these voters who just looks at everything through your own little periscope here, and you can't see past your nose, but all you care about is how you're doing, okay, I'm not going to dish you. I'm going to ask you this question. Our economy will crumble under Donald Trump. First of all, because he's a horrendous negotiator and a horrendous businessman. But also, what do markets hate more than anything else? They hate chaos. They hate instability. He is walking chaos. And by the way, do you really want to go back to living that way day to day, where you get up every morning and you wonder, what has this stupid SOB done this time? Do you really want to go back to that? So even if you're just voting your pocketbook, okay, Donald Trump can wipe you out. And it's going to cost you more to live, and it's going to have an adverse impact on you and your family directly. You think you're getting any tax break? Rich billionaire buddies are. Do you honestly think that he cares an iota about you? He would be an economic disaster. Kamala Harris isn't perfect. And one of the things we've done in a foolish way in this country is a lot of us have decided that if we don't agree with a certain candidate on every single issue, well, then just, no. You may disagree with her about some things. I may disagree with her about some things. But the truth of the matter is, she is, number one, fully qualified for the job. The people who are saying that her resume lacks weight are just embarrassing themselves. She's completely and totally qualified. But beyond that, she is committed to the American dream and to American principles. This can't end on our watch. This is not just another election. We could lose the whole farm here if we don't behave and act like Americans. I've tried to really lay this out for you in very radically rational terms. Think about this. Who knows more about Donald Trump? You with your red hat? Or the literally now hundreds of people who worked for him who now have said he is completely unfit for office? Who do you think really knows better? And you want to find out? If you're a Donald Trump supporter, all I'm asking you is to have the courage to ask yourself why you support him. I just laid out a dozen reasons that he is unqualified and unfit, any one of which should have disqualified him. It's coming up. It's the biggest election in American history. Do the right thing by this great country. Don't come down on the wrong side of history, because if you do, it may be the last time you ever vote. We're radically rational.